Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Remember, if you missed any part of the show, you can always get the podcast at Google, Apple, Spotify, whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Remember, while you're there, to rate, subscribe, and share, so that way you and your friends never miss a minute of the show. As we have now figured out, every single city in America has now become a border town, and the one that's been making the headlines is, of course, the Big Apple, New York City, where migrants are sleeping 3 to 4 deep on sidewalks because the city has no idea how to deal with them whatsoever, because you have people like Mayor Eric Adams who said, sure, let's be a sanctuary city. And then they started coming there from the Biden administration. They started coming there from Governor Greg Abbott. And now it seems like their big plan is just to turn parks, schools, community centers into shelters for illegal immigrants. Joining us now on the KVI studio line, tell us what can actually be done as opposed to this insanity, Councilwoman Inna Vernikov. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you've been very, very vocal and very, very outspoken that what the mayor is doing is completely wrong and there are better options out there. What should we be doing instead?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm an immigrant myself. I came to this country at 12 years old with my family legally, following the laws of our country. I waited 3 years before we immigrated. Our grandparents came here first. So, I understand the struggles of immigrants. We came here, we didn't speak English. We accepted benefits. It was tough to kind of get accustomed to a new life. So I get it, but this is just a whole different story. About a year ago, our mayor basically invited this situation that we have now, and now he's backtracking. And I think that the problem is with very, very bad leadership that we have right now. And I think the issue is that we are misinterpreting this mandate that's not even a law. It's called the right to shelter. So what they're saying is that everyone in the city has a right to shelter. The right to shelter, in 1979, a homeless New Yorker sued the city and the state to be able to have a right to a shelter. And the city and state signed a consent decree where they agreed that if there's a homeless New Yorker who needs a place to live and needs a place to eat, that he's entitled to a home. What they're doing now is applying that mandate. It's not even really a law to essentially the entire world. So if you come from any country, you don't have legal documents, you're not a citizen of the United States, you're not a New York resident, you just arrived here, you came here illegally, you, according to them, are now entitled to all these benefits. You're entitled to housing, you're entitled to security, you're entitled to medicine. That is just wrong. And because we invited this, we now have this crisis on our hands. It's a total mistake. What they have to do right now is just stop. They have to end it. They have to stop funding this craziness, send the buses back, send them back to Washington, send them back to wherever they came from, and just stop it. Because what we're seeing is these migrants are going to be living in our schools, our gyms, our recreational centers. They're going to have to take over our parks. It's not, they're sacrificing law-abiding citizens and New Yorkers in order to accommodate foreigners who broke the law.
So here's something I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. If they want everybody to come there, aren't they displacing homeless New Yorkers by accepting everybody from all over the world? And isn't that where the law kind of runs into itself? Because the American laws apply to Americans, not people who aren't American. And if they want to be so compassionate to the homeless, they can't be because they don't have the space for them right now.
I mean, I think this is like a problem with the Democrats and the Democratic Party in general. This is what they do. They, in the name of helping the underprivileged, the poor, the minorities, what they end up doing is actually harming both. They end up harming the citizens, the law-abiding New Yorkers, law-abiding Americans, and the other side. You could take the migrant crisis as an example. Right now, they want to put 7,500 migrants at Floyd Bennett Field. I know you're not from here, but we have a national park here, Floyd Bennett Field. There is a sports center in there. It's in the heart of a residential community. They want to place 7,500 migrants in that space. Well, it's a problem for everybody. It's a problem for the residents who are living right around those communities because they don't know who these people are. They don't know if they have a criminal record. They don't know if they are vaccinated. They have all kinds of concerns. But it's also an issue for the migrants who are going to be living there because the area floods. It's not near hospitals. according to some community activists, there's radiation in the area where they want to place the migrants. So it's actually not good for anyone. But they want to go ahead and push this onto us. I don't know, maybe because the areas where they want to place these people, they didn't vote for Governor Hochul or Mayor Adams. I'm not sure. But they are running out of options, and the only real way to resolve this is to stop it.
We're talking with Councilwoman Inna Vernikov from New York about this illegal immigration crisis that's happening on the streets of New York. Now, I know you're a big supporter of Israel, and I'm a big supporter of Israel, but don't you think it's bad timing that Mayor Eric Adams decided to go on some kind of trip to Israel while all this is going on in his city, while it's making national headlines? I mean, I'm all for politicians visiting Israel and seeing it and having a nice shawarma or whatever, but it seems to me that's really bad timing and makes everybody look bad.
Look, I can't disagree. We have a real crisis in the city. You know, it's in New York City. It is the worst here. I know they're coming to other cities, but I think it is really bad here. It's coming to everybody's doors. Right now we have bipartisan support of kind of getting this issue resolved. We have both Democrats and Republicans very, very upset. We actually had both Republicans, very right-wing Republicans, and Democrats standing on the same stage, sharing a stage the other day at the Floyd Benefield protest. So I think we have a real crisis, and I think it would be prudent for the mayor to be here right now. And even though, you know, he went to Israel, and, you know, he did some great things there, and he met with important leaders, and I do appreciate that he went there, but I think it was the wrong timing.
So in the last few minutes we have with Councilwoman Inna Vernikov, I mean, I noticed they're putting all these things in certain areas like Queens. They're putting them in the Broadway district. They're putting them on the west side. I noticed they're not putting the illegal immigrants on, say, the Upper East Side or some of the Democrat areas. Am I mistaken in that? Is this specifically targeted, or it's just where they got hotel space?
I don't know. We were told that every district is getting migrant shelters. So we're all expecting it. I have one in my district, but I think it also depends on whether it's a family migrant shelter or it's all men. I think the really bad part of it is when it's just men, like just a men's migrant shelter. When it's families, it's, you know, it's women, it's children. People tend to think that it's safer. The one that's in my district, it is families, so it's just like women, children, and we haven't had any issues with it. But I know that in other districts, they're trying to place just men, and that I understand could be problematic.
Especially when we've seen who's been coming across the border, that we've apprehended terrorists, that we've apprehended known felons who have already been sent back to the country of origin, and that they're coming in, and now all of a sudden they're entitled to housing in a hotel or whatever else it is. It makes for a very, very scary thing. It's not like New York hasn't had issues with terrorism before. Councilwoman Inna Vernikov from New York City, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your insight. Appreciate you joining us as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always a pleasure. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.